then when that says you are live, which we are, we go to the holding screen, make sure that mic is switched off on YouTube. Yeah, so that's us on our countdown cross on YouTube. When you switch that. Good evening, Scotland. Good evening, social media land. I hope you are well. It is Friday the 13th. Nobody told me it was Friday the 13th. Okay, it's Friday the 13th of January 2023. Welcome to that Indy show. We're recording tonight's live again for the security and integrity of the message and the ability to upload and share via other platforms. If this live is taken down for any reason, I will continue to record it, but move the live straight over to the boxes on TikTok. And it'll take about 5 minutes to do that, and I will cry into my great big independence pillow that I've lost my YouTube channel. It's weird. I don't think it'll happen. Anyway, for those that are regular viewers, they know that I start off with a bit of context setting for my lives to explain my point of view from where my discussion comes from. So all the context is now taken from Scotland not being in a union of equals and not having the legal ability to revisit its relationship with the union. This was made perfectly clear when the Supreme Court made its verdict a couple of months ago. You know what? In actual fact, none of the devolved nations at all can revisit their relationship with the union. Meanwhile, the elected officials of England can and do and always will do so forever because they're allowed to do it, but we're not. And this is the major democratic deficit, the playing field that Scotland works on in its day job political journey, when it's doing the do in Holyrood and all the rest of it. But we don't have the full levers of a normal independent nation to fully embrace day job politics and to complete our responsibility to the Scottish voters. And this is the kind of context that I do most of my lives within. And I think it's important that we have that set out right at the very start of this. Now, there we go, that's the one. We're going to just play this.
My name's Robert, and I have a question for you. Are you yes yet?
So, for those who are regulars here again, that was Robert. Robert is a good friend of mine. He was a no to yes person, and I always play his little jingle at the start, and I always drop his little link into the live chat at the side there. Robert, being a no to yes voter for Scottish independence, he voted no in 2014 and would quite happily vote yes now, has gone on quite a journey to get to where he is. And it's important that I do this at the start of every live because some people don't stay to the end, and I need to push this out because it's a great tool for those people that may not actually want to admit that they're thinking about voting yes, and they need to hear that story from another person, somebody maybe that they don't know. And Robert's story is brilliant, and I was privileged enough to spend 45 minutes talking to him about it. So I would recommend that you use this, send it out to your friends. If you know any sort of no voters or people that are undecided, give them this and let them watch it. Listen to Robert's story. It's very, very good. Right, let's have a quick look to see who we've got in the chat. Pfeiffer1990. Hello, Pfeiffer1990. You are a new person in here, unless you're hiding. Hold on a second. Is Dan in? Rin is Dan. I still have this. Last night I was thinking, who's Rin? And then he says, I'm really hurt, Mo. It's Dan. And I knew this. So I promised I would always keep a post-it note of Rin is Dan. But Pfeiffer, you're very welcome here. Hi, Karim. How are you? And Kieran, thank you. And Michelle's here as well. Cable Games. Hey, Mo, did I see the post about the Pope? It's already on Scottish independence. I've not seen the one on the Pope. I've not been, if you've posted it on Discord, I've not seen that there, Cable. But I did see your other one about the Constitution. I actually have read that article as well. And we'll have a wee chat about that at the end as well. And there is Jimmy. Aaron, how are you, my friend? It's good to see you all here. we have collectively about 11 people watching tonight, which is great. So don't be afraid to introduce yourself. Okay, please don't. We do have a nice little robot that does a little bit of moderating, and I've got maybe two or three other moderators here as well. And they are here just to make sure that the chat is safe and non-toxic. So we don't like, talking nonsense, basically. It's not like a right wing, we're not going to let you speak about anything, but there's certain things like we don't want any hate speech. We don't want any references to 1930s Germany accusing Scotland of becoming that. Those sort of things. You know what I'm talking about. And my moderators are pretty cool for doing these things. So thank you very much for coming on. Right, so we're going to be talking about this little thing called WHAT-ABOUTERY tonight, okay? This is the waste of time style of discussion that occurs too often, mostly from those proud Anglo-British nationalists thinking that they can have a bit of one-upsmanship on us simple-minded indie folk. But before we get into the ins and outs of WHAT-ABOUTERY, it's probably best that we recognise its bigger, more aggressive brother, the toxic conversationalist. My throat's going, so I'm going to quickly take a mouthful of coffee. For those that don't know, I'm not looking for sympathy with this, by the way. I'm a survivor of a stage 4 throat cancer tumour, and as a result of that, I have one saliva gland, so my mouth gets very dry and my throat gets very dry when I have prolonged periods of talking. So lukewarm, milky coffee is a great way of making sure that I have enough moisture going down my throat and mouth for talking over long spells. But I've already been talking a lot today already at work and stuff, so I'm a bit dry in the mouth. Okay, so yeah, before we discuss WHAT-ABOUTERY, it's probably best that we recognise its bigger, more aggressive brother, the toxic conversationalist. The truth of the matter is that WHAT-ABOUTERY is a simplified version of a toxic behaviour. And what I mean by this is that when you're discussing something with someone and you're clearly getting your proven point over, the individual perhaps that you're discussing the topic with just starts on a totally different subject. Just boo, out the blue, bang, there it goes. You could be discussing the fiscal opportunities that Scotland cannot explore due to the limitation of its powers because it is Westminster that controls those particular levers. As soon as you get to that stage that is going to prove your point and make a mockery of the system of politics that your verbal sparring partner seems to love, your point becomes totally moot, as we're now on to a totally different subject, like hard borders, for instance. It could be worse, as the individual taking their lead from the boorish behaviours of Westminster could just talk over you constantly, not allowing you the space to make your point, confusing you and keep you constantly on the back foot. This gives the horrible impression that you're not actually articulate and you don't know what you're talking about because you're constantly interrupted and you're constantly set back and have to reset your brain thinking, what was I talking about again? And it's not good. And the truth of the matter is, the person that is shouting over you and doing this, they look like the more articulate and better individual. I despise this toxic behaviour, and it displays no empathy or the audible version of manners. But do you know something? I think in the grand scheme of things, we all actually know people that act like that.
My name is Hero, and I have a question for you. Are you yes yet?
Yeah, we kind of do know people like that, don't we? It's I know people in my real life that are quite toxic with the way that they speak. They just want to talk over you, and it's very prevalent in the independence debate. It's very obvious on TikTok. And one of the reasons that I came to YouTube to do lives is simply because I don't want that interruption. I don't want that ability. Am I a control freak? No. I just want to discuss some pertinent points to pro indie folk that might get something out of it, that might be able to go and inspire people that, that are maybe undecided and stuff, and to help you to get that point across as well. And that's one of the reasons we've got the Discord community as well. And we'll talk about that later on. Who do we have? Who do we have? Did I see Morgan? Yes, Morgan. Morgan is going to also be a moderator. I promised Morgan that he would be a mod. Morgan and I go back many, many, many years. And I basically said when he came back on to YouTube and Discord here that I would quite welcome my good friend to be a mod again. So there you go. I think that I've done that now. Are you? Hold on. I don't know whether it. Hold on. Does it? Why is it not giving you the? Oh no, it does. It says that you've got the mod. That's cool. Brilliant. Okay, so let's get on to WHAT-ABOUTERY and what it's all aboutery. Okay, so, I think the best way to talk about WHAT-ABOUTERY is just to give you examples and then disprove them with a bit of common sense and fact. So this is a bit of a light-hearted discussion, but we've actually heard all of these arguments and things before. So let's set the scene. You're having a pleasant discussion about Indy, and then the Brit Nat that you're discussing things with turns the subject onto something else by saying, yeah, but what about the ferries? Now, I'm starting with the ferries because this is the darling of the Scottish opposition parties and the right-wing media that we have to fight against. And it's used to try and force us independence folk into a corner by saying that independence will fail because the SNP can't even build ferries. I say, own it. Own that phrase. What about the ferries? What about the ferries? We get it all the time. But hey, you know what? The SNP are not the independence movement. You guys are, okay? And I agree absolutely 100% that it was a failing of the SNP. And I'm an SNP voter because they're the conduit to what I want. So when somebody says, well, yeah, in the middle of a discussion, what about the ferries? You can't even do this. What about the ferries? Own it, completely own it, and agree with them saying, yeah, absolutely. It's a failure of the SNP, but it's not a failure of independence. We're not independent. Yeah, but, what about the fact that that's going to be what independence is all about? No, it's not. If people were constantly failing, okay, if people were constantly failing Scotland in a political sphere, we would have the ability to vote them out. We really, really would. And we have to recognise that it is a tragic failure of the SNP, but it has absolutely no reflection on how independence would work in Scotland at all. And of course, if you really want to get into it with the British nationalist, you can draw a comparison about the £5 billion of wasted taxpayer. In fact, I think it's more than 5 billion now of wasted taxpayers' money on that new tank system that will never be delivered. It's mental. It's mental. But remember the ferries. Remember to agree wholeheartedly that it is a failure of government. Okay, that's my opinion. I'm not going to be openly critical about it because you have to make mistakes sometimes. No government's perfect. Obviously, look at Westminster. No government is perfect. All right, that's why we're in the independence movement. All right, that's why we believe that we should have a vote, and we would all vote yes. In the grand scheme of things, but own it completely, agree with it, point out that it is a failure of the Scottish government, but it's not a failure of independence because A, we're not independent, and B, if a party was constantly doing that, we would vote them out. C, the tanks, and let's just do a D as well, which is like, something, Westminster's failing Scotland, but we can't vote them out because we have a democratic deficit. And that's the next thing that we're actually going to talk about, and I've got a web page to talk about, and it's like, okay then, what about the deficit? Do we all know what the deficit is? That's this great big chunk of change that apparently Scotland owes because we can't budget money, because we have the right to borrow things and we're not to balance the budget. Bullshit. Absolute nonsense. Okay, Scotland let's be clear about this, cannot run a deficit at all. No, it cannot. It has to balance the books or run an underspend by law. So many British nationalists call this a barefaced lie. I've been called a liar because of this particular point. Okay? And it is an absolute truth that Scotland has a legal obligation to deliver a balanced budget. And I have a freedom of information request actually based around this just now. There. Let me just hold on. I think Pfeiffer says that SNP should never have taken the gamble to save those jobs. They've just taken them. I agree, Pfeiffer. I agree. I think that there could have been a better way of dealing with the ferries. It's above my pay grade to do. I thought it was a great idea having that owned at the time. It's not actually obviously SNP people that are going out and building the boats. I think we all understand that, but the decision-making process was a bit flawed. Have they learned from it? I bloody well hope so. I really do. But, you know, yeah, there's a good thing that Michelle just said there. They were successful in the Queensferry crossing. They were also, I can't think, there was something else that I had written down for that. But okay, Aris is asking, what are the ferries? Okay, if anybody wants to quickly mention to Aris about what the ferries fiasco was about, and basically in uncertain terms, it was the Scottish Government needed to build a couple of ferries for the island communities. They bought a failing shipyard on the west coast, and as a result of that, they wanted to save the jobs there because it was going under. They contracted the building of the ferries out there, but it's kind of failed. We still don't have all the ferries in place yet. I think one of them's built, but you know, it's the way it goes. There's something that doesn't sit right with the ferries, with the contractors. I think there's probably more to Pfeiffer than we actually get, probably the information we get. And we might get the full story one day. But do you know what? It's important that we recognise the feelings of that and learn from it. And that's the whole point about WHAT-ABOUTERY. When you get that, what about the ferries? Just own it and just explain, yeah, do you know what? It is a failing. I recognise that, but it doesn't reflect badly on independence because, well, we're not independent yet. Right, let's go to the deficit thing. I need to bring up a web page just now. Where are we? We're back one. Right, here we go. This here, right, is, oh, that's for pensions. We don't want that one. Let's get the other one. Coming on to pensions afterwards. Yes, we are. This is the one we want. The Scottish Deficit and Independence Questions release, a Freedom of Information release. Okay, so the information requested was, you asked for the current Scottish deficit, how the Scottish Government would reduce the deficit if it became independent, the current Scottish GERS data, and what would Scotland do with Trident if it became independent? Any plans, documents, or reports of that nature? Some of this isn't relevant to what we're talking about, but this part here is the current Scottish deficit and how the Scottish Government would reduce the deficit if it became independent. So this comes from the Scottish Government website, the Parliament. This is not the SNP writing this. This is the civil servants who have access to all the information for it all. So here's the response. Dealing with each part of your question in turn. The current Scottish deficit. The answer to your question is that the Scottish Government does not have a deficit. The Budget Scotland Act for each year and subsequent in-year revisions deliver a balanced budget. I hear the Union stunned into silence. Okay, how the Scottish Government would reduce the deficit if it became independent. Scotland's fiscal position under independence would depend on a number of factors, including the level of spending Scotland chose to allocate to areas such as defence, which may be different from current UK government policy. The Scottish Government produced a comprehensive plan for independent Scotland in 2014. Things have changed since then. That link there is not an ideal link to talk about it. If the programme for government in these years published on the 3rd of September, the government announced it would now undertake the necessary work to update the plan and ensure that people have the information that they need to make informed choices on the future of the country. So, under the Freedom of Information Act, okay, by law, the Budget Scotland Act for each year, when that's passed, we have to deliver a balanced budget or an actual underspend. And this again is the this here again is the wholehearted thing about the Scottish deficit not actually existing. If you want to have this here, I'm going to stick that link there that I've just stuck in the chat is that web page. By all means, take it, use it, throw it about, read it, digest it, understand it. And, you know, I think it's obvious for us people that are in the independence movement that we get that. But don't ever be called a barefaced liar. And if anybody ever says to you, hey, what about the deficit? Just send them to that page. It's a nice little freedom of information thing. Good night, Kieran. I hope you sleep well, my friend. Oh my goodness, Barry's in the house. I better behave. Make sure my mic's on. Oh my goodness. Barry, I need to make you as well. Barry actually helps manage this channel. He is a manager on it, but he is not actually a moderator on the channel. He should be a moderator. There you go, Barry. Don't let the power go to your head, my friend. Okay. Right. Cool. You can watch it anytime, Kieran. You can join in the chat anytime. Thank you for stopping by, my friend. Yeah, so where did we get to? Where is my notes? My notes. There they are. Brilliant. So, that's a bit of an eye-opener. You know, when you actually see a legal document or freedom of information request in black and white stating that Scotland can't run a deficit because of the way that it works. You know, I find the whole thing, you know, completely eye-opening for the whole thing. It's mental. Absolutely mental. Where is my... That's the one we're playing. We'll play this jingle.
I am Mo's mum, and I have a question for you. Are you yes yet?
That is most definitely my mum. She is a lady for independence as well. She was also a campaigner for CND back in the day. She sometimes comes on to these lives. She actually commented on my TikTok advertisement for tonight's live, and I thought, oh, is my mum going to be on here? Mum, if you're in the background just now, please don't hide. Please just come on and say hello. I don't think she's on tonight. Don't you dare look for the ban all button, you crazy cat. Yeah, right. So the next little bit that we want to go on to and talk briefly about is that other favourite that comes up quite frequently, which is, okay, what about the pensions? What about the pensions? How are you going to pay for the pensions? How are the pensions going to work in Scotland? Who's going to pay for them? You know, pensions will never be the same. Well, I think it's important that we understand how pensions work, first of all, before we go on to discuss that. And the first thing is there is no actual pot of money. Understand that straight away. There's no pot of money. The pensions that people currently receive today is paid from national insurance contributions that we currently have. But you have to also understand that Scotland generates more than enough national insurance through all its means to pay for these pensions and a hell of a lot more. Now, I just so happen to have the GERS expenditure report for 2021. Let me just bring that up for you guys to have a wee look at just now. Here we go again. So this again, let me take this and I will stick this down in the chitty chat. Chitty chat, where are you? There you are. Brilliant. There we go. So this particular thing here, this web page is the Government Expenditure and Revenue for Scotland 2021. I use this one in particular because it's an established one where we have already gone through that budgeting year with. All right, I thought it was important to use something that was already established and in place. And if we scroll down, okay, and bring this part up here, you can see the total public sector revenue for Scotland for that year. And that bit there says national insurance contributions. Okay, and if you fall down, you can see it says 12 billion. So it's actually less than 12 billion, but if we go scroll down further, it tells us the exact amount. That is, look at this here, it says million, so that is 11,476 million, which is 11,476 whatever, right? So it's just short of 11.5 billion pounds that we generate in Scotland for national insurance. So how much do we pay out in state pensions currently? Well, I looked at the let me get rid of that just now. I looked at the one of the profiling things that shows you the population, the census, that's what it's called. And presently there's just short of 65,000 pensioners in Scotland. So I rounded it up to 65,000. And the national state pension is about 9,500, and I rounded that up to 10,000. So let's get the calculator out, and we'll do a quick calculation. Calculator. So we have 65,000 pensioners in Scotland drawing a pension, right? Multiply that by 10,000, and we get 650 million pounds. But even if that was 700 million pounds, it's still not a billion, you know, and we've got 11.5 billion in national insurance contributions. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to be a perfect storm of beauty for a pension fund, okay, because it doesn't work that way. Of course, there's going to be other things that national insurance has to pay for, like the NHS, other benefits and things. But what I am saying is, in an independent Scotland, we would have a different way, a different understanding, and a different way of budgeting and spending and generating money with a better taxation system and stuff. But let's just stick to the pensions just now. When somebody does that whataboutery of like, well, what about the pensions? Who's going to pay them? Scotland is. Scotland's going to pay for them. We generate £11.5 billion in national insurance each year, and the actual amount of money that is spent necessarily on pensions is just short of £700 million. Yeah, so cram it, basically. Cram it. It's mental. It really is. It's fascinating to think that people wouldn't believe that Scotland could do this. And when I looked at that JERS thing again and thought, when I looked at, let me just bring it up again. Hold on, now I need to do the old changer, Rooney. Wait for my little remote control to come up. So when I actually looked at that before and saw that there, I was like, is that 11,476,000? But it's not. It's not, because when you go back up to that part there and you see national insurance contributions, boof, just short of 12 billion. And then you can see there that this is 11,476 million. Okay? 11,476 million pounds. All right? So that also, just bear in mind, just so you completely get this, is the UK government's figures on what we have on national insurance, not the Scottish government figures, because Scotland doesn't collect that yet. Might do within the next couple of years, but we don't actually collect that yet. Excuse me. So yeah, that is the old pensions thing. So let me just play one little jingle, and then we're going to move on to the last sort of half a dozen of those, which I can run through quite quickly.
The Saltire has a growing Discord community. It is the perfect place to rub shoulders with other indie folk like yourself. If you want to be part of this community, send Mo a DM on his Twitter account @TheSaltireIG. Okay. So we have a great little independence-minded Discord community. All right. Sometimes the chat's about independence and politics and stuff. Sometimes we bitch about people. Sometimes we turn around and just talk even more crap than I do here on YouTube. But the point is, we're a community, and it is really for independence people only. I got called a cult leader for doing this. I'm a cult leader. I'll wear that badge with pride. Absolutely. If being a cult leader gets us independence, absolutely. I'm all for that, you know. But yeah, no, we're not a cult. It's just a safe space where people that have got focused on independence or are sympathetic towards it can come and talk freely and be around other people rubbing shoulders. I think we've got about 33 people in it now. It doesn't sound like much, but you know what? They're good folk. I like them. I like spending time with them. I think that pretty much everybody that's in the chat just now, with the exception of a couple of people, are members of it. They come on here, they support my live, and I quite like that. So thank you to everybody that's on that. But listen, if you want to join, you're going to have to first of all have a Discord account. So go download Discord on your phone or download the app on your computer, set up an account, and then go and drop a wee DM to me on Twitter at the Saltire IG, or on Instagram, which is just the Saltire. That way I can see that you have thanks, Aaron. That you have an active independence account, and then I'll send you an invitation. You'll be stuck in the welcome room until you and I can actually have a quick video chat, so I can verify A, you're a real person, and B, you have an account that is pro-independence. It kind of stops any infiltration from Anglo-British nationalists that would come there to record conversations or just cause disruption. Not into that at all. So yeah, if you fancy joining, just get in touch. Dead easy. So we've got a few other whatabouteries to go on to, which is, what about defence? What about NATO? What about the Russians? What about Trident? What about trade? What about currency? What about shutting the fuck up? All right? But let's briefly talk about all these particular things. Presently, if we're talking about defence, right, Scotland pays into the Union, I think it's 4.1 billion into defence, which is more than enough to actually join NATO, would you believe? Only 1.1 billion is actually spent inside Scotland. So if we were to retain that amount, we could create quite a strong Scottish Defence Force, quite an elite force. We could build our own ships. We wouldn't be projecting power across international lines. We're not going to build aircraft carriers or anything like that. We might have a couple of frigates or missile things, fast patrol boats, drones, like a lot of global hawks to patrol our waters, and then have the fast reaction boats coming in. A good, strong land-based defence force. Why not integrate that with border control? You know, why not have that overlapping circle for that? We already have a couple of very, very important radar sites that NATO would not really be wanting to lose. Okay, these particular radar sites monitor both civilian and military airwaves. They look for, like, non-NATO military movement. They track Russian boats coming down the North Sea. I'm pretty sure that NATO wouldn't want to lose these massive overlapping circles of radar capability. We're also geopolitically, strategically placed in the North Sea. I'm pretty sure, again, that NATO wouldn't want us to go, like, barefaced into independence without having something in place. However, do you really think for 1 second that when it comes to independence and we're going through a transition period, do you think that the unionist people are going to go onto the table and get all the toys and go, these belong to me, they're mine, by the way, so what are you going to do about it? Nonsense, right? So straight up, there's these things called the Vienna Conventions, which were set in place to allow the secession of states from one thing and another. All right, so get this and understand this. Scotland's entitled to a share of the assets. We're entitled to take on a share of the debt as well.
but it's all negotiable. Okay, now the negotiations are way, way above my pay grade. All right, way above mostly everybody in this room's pay grade. We won't have a say in it. Okay, however, we have to trust the people doing the negotiation to negotiate for the best possible outcome for Scotland. And do you know what? I think when you look at the negotiating skills of the Union from Brexit, we're really going to have the upper hand, and we have international law on our side as well. So when it comes to defence, we are going to get our share of the assets. And to give an example of how the Vienna Conventions operated during the fall of the Soviet Union, when the Black Sea states all kind of seceded from the Soviet Union, the first thing that kind of happened was in Ukraine, for instance, okay, they give up the nuclear weapons to have no debt, right? So they were like, okay, and the West kind of wanted that to happen as well, by the way. They kind of helped with that discussion. So Ukraine had no debt, but all the soldiers, all the airmen, all the sailors, they were all given a choice. Do you want to continue working for the new Russian army, military, whatever, or do you want to go and serve on a Ukrainian boat or any of the other Black Sea states? And a fair chunk of people, remained with the Russian forces, and the majority of people went back to their home countries because that's what they wanted to do. Do you think that maybe that option will be given to Scottish soldiers serving in the British Army? Some might stay, some might go. And I think it's reasonable to say that that's the case. Absolutely. Yes, Pfeiffer, that's where I was coming on to next. Absolutely. Scotland, as an independent nation, can lease the right to NATO to have the bases in Scotland. So we've got a couple of RAF bases, perfectly functioning bases. We've got a couple of Navy bases, perfectly functioning Navy bases. And we've got a few sort of land-based army bases as well. So let's just consider for a second, while we are preparing our own defence force, why can't we lease these out, to NATO? I have a strong feeling that the Royal Air Force will remain in place in Scotland until we get, our Scottish Air Force or whatever we're going to have. I firmly believe that. I want rid of Trident. Okay, we're talking about Trident in a minute. But I want rid of Trident, but it's not going to go straight away. It might not go for 5 to 10 years, maybe even longer. We could force it out of Scotland by, decommissioning it, or we could turn around and say to Westminster, you're going to have to get it, and get it out of Scotland. But they don't want it down in the south of England. But, maybe they should just, there's other places they can have it. It's mental. It really is mental. Anyway, so that's defence and NATO. What about the Russians? Okay, some people say, well, Putin's going to invade Scotland, come independent. So what about the Russians? Shut up, man. If the what strategic value would the Russians have to fly elite paratroopers across to drop on Scotland? Okay, what are they going to do? Is it for the nuclear base? Is it for the geopolitical state? Are they going to put enough soldiers on the ground to subjugate the population and control everything? I doubt it. I doubt it. Okay, big ass time. All right, it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen, because even if we weren't a member of NATO, okay, we kind of have like an unseen defence pact with the rest of the United Kingdom. If they allowed that to happen, it's kind of putting them on the back foot as well. So come negotiations, once again, all right, in the interim until we got set up with NATO, if that's what we're going to do, or before we get our defence force set up, are you telling me that the rest of the UK, that Westminster's going to say, nah, screw you guys, you're not getting any help whatsoever? Of course not. That's never ever going to happen. We don't have to fear the Russians. I personally don't fear the Russians. My wife is Russian, all right? And we're both incredibly anti-war, by the way, when it comes to this. So please don't think for 1 second that we're pro-war. We're also exceptionally anti-Russian propaganda, exceptionally anti-Western propaganda on this. Somewhere in the middle is a grey area called the truth. And the truth of the matter is, people have died. And that's enough for me to say, this is all wrong. Okay? I'm an ex-soldier as well, and I don't agree with war at all. I agree with defence. I think Ukraine's got a right to defend itself, and I think the people of Crimea, if you go back and understand the history of it, they had a right to defend themselves as well with what was going on. Okay? I agree as well, Pfeiffer. I think England is a bit more of a threat. I wouldn't say England. I think Westminster. My dad's English, but he's lived in Scotland all his life. He's not pro-Indy or anything. He's very much a Labour supporter. But even though he's kind of like, I've got to vote Labour again. I don't feel kind of right about it, Labour. But it's definitely a Westminster thing. And there's definitely an element within the Anglo-British nationalist movement in England which are a wee bit too right-wing not to be keeping half an eye on, without a doubt. So we talked about Trident there as well. Well, what about trade? Oh, what about trade? You're going to give up 60 to 90% of trade with your biggest trading partner, the rest of the UK. What, do you want to give up trading with us, like? Do you? That's my stock answer. You're probably right, yeah. But if you don't want to sell us your shit, we'll still sell you our shit. Happily, you can have our stuff. You can buy our stuff. We're not going to stop trading with you. Yeah, but you won't be able to if you're, you have to have a trade deal. Okay. Hey, EFTA, can we join you, please? Yeah, okay. Right, good. There we are. Now you can trade freely with us and you don't have a say in it. UK currently has a trade deal with EFTA, which is the Nordic countries and Iceland. I think there's 4 or 5 countries in it. Okay, they've got a trade deal. They're not a member of EFTA. They just trade with them. Okay, and that's cool because we've already asked if we can join EFTA. And EFTA says if you have a legal way to show that you're wanting to be independent, then let's do it. You can join EFTA and have those benefits. Now, joining EFTA gives freedom of movement across the EU as well. Wow, what does that mean? We can go and visit the EU. We then have a positive immigration programme to fill the vacancies in our job market that people don't want to have over here. Love it or hate it, we need people. Scotland needs immigration, all right? We need people in. We don't need to open the door and have a floodwater people in, but we can have sensible immigration. We can have immigration through the EU. We can have positive freedom of movement. We can do things like that. But the trade thing, like Pfeiffer just said, 60% of trade England needs will cost them more to ship across the sea. Absolutely. And that's the thing as well. Look at our closest, most greatest and massive trading partner, the EU, on our doorstep, like a couple of 100 miles across the north, not even a couple of 100 miles, just a short journey across the North Sea in a container ship. Right there, you can see Rotterdam. It's there. It's there. Hi Rotterdam, how are you? But we're not allowed to trade with them just now. But join EFTA, and we can. Okay, join EFTA, and we don't have the discussion of trade with the rest of the UK come up in the negotiations part. You'd be at the table and you would see like the Anglo-British nationalists with shuffling their paper. Excuse me, yes, absolutely. What have we got here? Yes. Okay, well, today we're going to talk about trade. And trade says we need some sort of trade deal. We don't want goods coming to and fro across the border between Scotland and England. That would just be shocking. Guys, has anybody told you that we're actually going to be in EFTA in about 3 months' time? We've still got 2.5 years worth of negotiations with you, so let's talk about trade in 6 months' time once we've sorted that out with EFTA, because then we're not going to have this problem. So when somebody says trade to you, remember 2 things. 1, that's okay. If you don't want to trade with us, that's fine. We'll still happily trade with you. You can still buy our stuff. Happily. Right? And 2, remember EFTA. EFTA want Scotland in their little club because we're just like them. We're grown up. Okay? Without a doubt. Let's have a quick look what's saying there.
No, I'm going to go back and agree with Pfeiffer there. 60% of trade England needs will cost them more to ship across the sea. They've not made any grounds for any trade deals that are worth their salt since, before Brexit. Kim Roo saying Anglo-Nats, a third of the population, are vicious wee things. I think that there is an element of I'm not racist English, but I think there's an element of right wingishness going on in parts of England with certain small pockets of people. What's Michelle saying? They say we need 50,000 people to come and work here each year, and why not? And this is part of the trade thing as well. Okay, now, if you have been on my lives before, or you have seen me on other people's lives in TikTok, this is one of my most favourite things to talk about. And I've been accused of being, this is a very utopian thing, but it's not, it's pragmatic. So I want you to listen to me through the lens and the earphones of pragmatism here. Okay, what is trade? Trade is the ability to create and manufacture goods and deliver them to potential customers overseas or within a domestic sort of setting. All right. So what has Scotland got going for it? Apart from all those wonderful things that we already know, whiskey, food and drink, brew, renewables, oil and gas, all that stuff. Okay, let's put that to the side. That's stuff that we know. Okay, let's just leave it there and there you go, oil, there you go, gas. We know you're going to run out eventually. Know that we're not going to want you because we want to live in a cleaner, greener earth. Just stay there. Whiskey, go and do your thing in your bonded warehouses. We know we've got like billions and billions of pounds in taxation waiting there to be done as the whiskey ages. The world wants whiskey. Whiskey companies, go and make more. We're independent now. We need more whiskey. Just there's wood and barrels. Go and make more. All that stuff. That's happening. That is happening. Shut up, Barry. Okay, just shut up. I love you, man, but shut up. Okay. Okay. So, what else has Scotland got going for it? So let's consider encouraging international investment into here, like manufacturing investment. There's one massive thing that manufacturers are looking for just now, and that's to have less of a carbon footprint on the products that they make and to have access to a massive market to sell them with, okay? So we have the ability right now to generate a lot of green energy. In an independent Scotland, if we wanted to, we could set up even more wind farms or other means to generate renewables to be able to help power or partially power manufacturing bases in Scotland. Okay, so that is a massive encouragement for international investment for manufacturing. The second thing that manufacturing really needs apart from energy, okay, is water. Water is required pretty much in every form of manufacturing that you can imagine. I think it costs 11,000 litres to make a smartphone. I didn't know that. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less, but it's still a big jug of water is necessary to make a smartphone. Right? Mental. Don't ask me why. I don't know. I'm not an engineer, but I read it somewhere. Okay, it's incredible to think that. So we have an embarrassingly large amount of water. Okay, we could set up trade hubs or manufacturing hubs around an ability to use water. All right. The third thing that they need is an educated population to be able to run these factories and operate these factories, engineers and such, okay, to build these factories. And Scotland has the most educated population in Europe at the third or fourth level of education, like basically for university degrees and stuff. So we have the ability to do this. And then if we had controlled immigration, we could then encourage more people to come across and work in these facilities as well, right? So it's important that you get that. So this is like the future of trade. And then if we're with EFTA, this manufacturing hub for whatever they're making has the ability to turn around and trade with the EU. So energy, water, people working in the factories to do this thing. And bear in mind, it's not like a factory like in the 70s and 80s. This is like mass automation and stuff, right? Skilled workforce, positive immigration, the ability to trade straight overseas. Are you telling me right now, okay, that our trade will not be suddenly amazing, even more amazing? And as a result of that trade, we go on to the next subject, which is, what about currency? What are you going to do? You're not getting our pound. Well, yeah, do you know what? During the transition, we're gonna have that pound, because we've not fully left the UK yet, and we're going to keep that pound until we are ready to start our own currency. Now, I'm a great believer we should start that currency sooner rather than later. And what do we need to start our own currency? A living, stable economy. Yeah, we've got that. Okay, the ability for that economy to grow positively. Okay, a population that is, based in democracy. Absolutely. And something that the world wants to help generate a reserve for that. Okay, so if we had that incredible manufacturing base, along with everything else that's going on, are you telling me right now that the Scottish pound, our Scottish currency, our own currency, is not going to be a sought after currency on the markets? Are you telling me right now that we couldn't sell bonds to generate a reserve of that currency? That we couldn't have the population, our population, migrating to the Scottish pound quite quickly? Okay, but what else do we need for that? Well, we need a central bank and an oversight in monetary policy. Those are the only two things that are missing presently for us to move into being independent as government departments, by the way. All we need, we've got everything else. Okay, there's satellite offices up here for passport, for DVLA, for taxation, for social security. And these are the jobs that will kind of migrate into Scotland and out of Scotland come independence. But they're all there. They're ready to go. We're using them right now to do things in Scotland. We are not a third world country. We're a developed nation. And the world recognises this in a big way. So the fact that we're developed, the fact that we've got a strong economy as it is, albeit it's kind of like shrinking because of Brexit, okay, doesn't mean that we're going to turn around and be in a position where our own currency is going to be garbage. We'll start off with an A credit rating, but I'm pretty sure within the months ahead of currency starting up, it'll get up to AA and maybe even AAA. I don't know. That's just speculation, but we've got a lot more going for us than the rest of the UK when it comes to that, and the ability not to have too much debt as start-up as well. But going back to that central bank thing, we actually have a national bank in place just now that people kind of laughed at when it was set up, and that is the Scottish Investment Bank. Are you telling me that bank was set up just for, a PR piece? Oh my God, no. That is set up there just to flick a few switches and change a few policies to become our central bank. Of course it is. There's no other reason why that wouldn't be the case. The only thing we really need to have in place is that oversight for monetary policy. And when we put that in place, that's pretty straightforward because it's kind of governed by international agreements anyway and how to actually deal with such things. So we just have to conform to that, get a few experts trained up, and bang, off we go. I like to make it sound dead simple, don't I? It's kind of like that utopian thing that I get accused of. But no, it's pragmatic and simple and straightforward. Let's set up positive manufacturing with the benefits that gives to other people on a corner of a trade hub in the sort of like the North Sea with access straight away to Europe. And let's have our own currency with that. So what about defence? Obviously, will be cool. What about NATO? Yeah, NATO's going to have us. We don't need to worry about the Russians. Trident will go, but we have to be reasonable about it, okay? I want it gone now, but that's just what's going to happen. We've talked about trade. What about trade? Well, that's cool. What about the currency? So the last point is, what about shutting the fuck up? Because all your whataboutery is absolute, utter nonsense. Why is that not working? There we go.
My name is Glenn. I have a question for you. Are you yes yet?
Glenny. I've not seen Glenny for a while, but you did send me a WhatsApp message. Glenn was one of the first, most consistent people to come and hang out on the lives and stuff. Miss you, Glenn. If you're hiding in the chat, come and say hello. That's it. That is it for tonight. Let's have a quick look in the chit chat here. Yes, I thank you for agreeing with me, Michelle. The Scottish Investment Bank will revert to a central bank, so we won't need to set up from scratch. Absolutely. And do you know something? It can take anything from a month to 6 months to have that in place properly from scratch. You know, that would be from scratch. You know, there's other countries that have set up their own currencies between a month and 6 months. And that was setting up the central bank to do that as well. So this would become, our central bank would become the lender of last resort. And one of the things that we do require for that is a reserve to be able to do that. So we have to somehow generate a reserve to do that. And I think that will come with international investment. Excuse me. And what else? The Scottish hubs that have been set up around the world revert to embassies. Yes, thank you, embassies. Yeah. Do you know something? The cautious approach by the Scottish government to do such things, like setting up the investment bank and the Scottish hubs throughout the world, part of that big plan. Love them or hate them, they're not stupid. They're doing the right. They're ticking the boxes for being prepared and ready for independence. And I quite like that. I really do. Anyway, that is us done for tonight. Thank you so much for everybody for coming and hanging out and listening to me ramble on and stuff. It's been good fun. I'm going to head across to Discord in about 5-10 minutes to see if anybody wants to come and chat. Promise it won't be as blue as last night. Well, I can't make any promises because I can't control the conversation of various people in the chat. But come across. If you want to join, I will check my Instagram and my Twitter. Bear in mind that you do have to have a Discord account. And make sure as well that you have an active independence account that I can at least see your face from when we have a little video chat. Okay, so let us disappear, and I won't be back until Monday now unless I'm on somebody else's live on TikTok, or something incredible happens over the weekend that's worthwhile coming up and doing a live. Okay, so thank you very much for hanging out with me, and I'll see some of you in Discord, and if not, another time.